Or good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, wherever you are tuning into today, and welcome to the Trailblazer webinar, The Changing Role of the General Manager. My name's Eloise Hansen. I'm the editor at Boutique Hotel News. We're an online B2B multimedia channel for boutique, lifestyle, and luxury hotels. A quick overview of how this webinar is going to run today. We're going to spend around 45, maybe 15 minutes in discussion with our Trailblazers today, followed by some time at the end to take some questions from the audience. So guys, those that are tuning in, if you do have any questions, please submit these using the Q&A function, and I will keep my eyes on that. And as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, so all those that have registered will automatically receive a copy of that replay within 48 hours. So one of our sponsors today is Aperto Guest Technologies. They're a property automation company and would like to play you a short video highlighting their latest feature.
The only thing better than knowing you're onto something good is knowing you're onto something better. Better insights into bookings and property details. Sustainable energy management that protects your bottom line and the environment. Simplified messaging between teams and guests. Content creation tools that grow and monetize your guest experience before and after they check in. And that feeling of, I've got this. Aperto Connect, your guest experience reimagined.
And if you'd like to hear more about Aperto, a link to their website has been popped in the chat for you to follow up on. So let's meet our Trailblazers, and I'm going to hand over to each to introduce themselves. And what I'll do is I'll move from left to right as per what's on the slide, which means, James, I'm going to begin first and foremost with yourself.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is James Clarke. I'm the General Manager here at Hilton London Bankside, which is located right here in central London, right beside the Tate Modern Museum. So good afternoon.
Thank you, James. And I'm handing over to Robert next, please.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning, or wherever you are in the world. I'm Robert Richardson, and I'm the Chief Executive of the Institute of Hospitality, the professional body globally for the hospitality industry. And prior to that, I was a hotel general manager, predominantly in the independent and boutique hotel sector. But prior to being a general manager, I've also worked for corporate chains such as IHG and Hilton. And by sheer coincidence, today is the anniversary of my first day as a hotel general manager, so quite coincidental.
Thanks, Robert. And Mike, I'm coming to you next, please.
Yes, thanks, Eloise. Good afternoon. My name's Mike Wood, and I general manage the hotel at Hempstead House down here in the Garden of England in Kent. And previously to my employment here about 10 years ago, again, I was in the independent and boutique hotels and always have been through my career, and looking forward to talking to you all today.
Thank you, Mike. Florence, over to you next, please.
Thank you, Eloise. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm the general manager of the Georgian House. That's a small boutique hotel in central London, between Victoria and Pimlico, very famous for our beautiful wizard chambers. So really looking forward to today.
Thank you, Florence. And I must add here that Florence was the first general manager that I ever interviewed when I first joined Boutique Hotel News. So it's great to complete the circle here, Florence.
Yes.
And last but not least, I'd like to hand over to Thomas.
Good afternoon. My name is Thomas Ferrante, and I'm lucky enough to be running a hotel called the Grove of Narberth, which is situated in the middle of the Pembrokeshire Coastal Path, a coastal path area of Pembrokeshire. So yeah, it's a lovely part of the world, a bit further away from most of my colleagues today, but I look forward to chatting through the topics.
Thank you, Thomas. So a second sponsor of today's webinar is sieven. They're an event management software company, and we're going to play a short video from one of their team members, Carla Pierce.
Thank you, Eloise, and hello to everyone watching this webinar today. I know you're very excited to start. My name is Carla Pierce, and I work for sieven on the supply and venue solution side, or the sieven Hospitality Cloud for Europe. I look after marketing, and we have a ton of content that we we wanted to share with you. I know that in this occasion, there's a lot of GMs listening, so we thought that it would be great to share with you our newest ebook called Using Data to Power Miles Recovery. And we really curated that with any senior position of the hotel in mind to take decisions for not only 2021, but also 2022. And we will be including topics like how can I help my buyers find me, or how can I find them? We will be also covering how can I stay on top of new business and increase efficiency over my team. I know that most of the people, a lot of the people listening, like general managers, have been hard hit with staff shortages due to the pandemic or maybe Brexit. So we wanted to also include tips and any tricks on how to help develop a plan that is not only right for your properties now, but will allow you to stay competitive. And obviously you can download this guide for free. You will find all the links in the chat, but obviously you also have it on our website, sieven.co.uk. And we really hope you enjoy this webinar, and let us know if you have any questions. Over to you, Eloise.
As Carla mentioned, the link to sieven's ebook has been popped into the chat. Now, if you haven't joined one of my webinars before, I always like to run through a couple slides of context. And this first slide are some stories that I have published on Boutique Hotel News over the last few months. And these are some examples of how general managers, owners, and hotel groups have responded to the challenges brought about by the pandemic. So we've got the Mandrake, which launched a staff wellbeing course prior to the hotel's reopening earlier this year. We have Red Hotels, which comprises the Scarlet and Betruthen in Cornwall, have become a real living wage employer. And employees at Red Carnation Hotels can now volunteer as motivators to train pupils in school about their work in hospitality. Now, so far, our examples have been focused on staff, and on this slide, we have Crera, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, Crera Hotels has revised its gratuity system, where an optional 10% charge at each property, so this is for things like meals and spa treatments, becomes collated into a fund and then evenly paid across all departments every quarter. But to really highlight how roles have changed, we have hotel owners such as Giles Fuchs at Berg Island Hotel picking up back of house shifts. And in a recent article in the Financial Times, I quote, "It is now not uncommon to see the general manager doing the nightly turn down service or taking the laundry home with them each night." So let's talk about the changing role of the GM. And I'd like to begin with a question to James, please. I mean, what exactly is your thought process when you are facing and having to respond to a difficult situation?
It's a good question, and thank you. Obviously, as a general manager, and significantly the hotel here was over 300 rooms. It's very busy, but London is growing back, should I say. Really you have to analyze the situation. You have to always seek to look for evidence to understand what is causing the issue. But the most important piece is make a decision. But also when you make that decision, it's for the well-being of your team first, and then you can take care of the customers. So when I have a difficult situation here, like all of us, from staff shortages, housekeeping, supply chain, but you have to be agile and you have to be fast. And the only way you can do that is lead from the front and be present on the floor with the team. Then you can make the right decision, which benefits everybody.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think we need to be braver in our decision and decision-making process?
Well, I believe if you lead from the front, you can absolutely be braver, because then you can make the decision right away. We have to be able to face danger, and yes, you will get pain along the way. There's no two ways around it. But the most important piece is we're trading, we're open. For me, it's all about the future and really just move forward. And then that gives the team confidence that the leader of the business is there with them hand in hand. And equally, the customers will see that and recognize that. And I firmly believe customers will come back to hotels that deliver great service and do it well, particularly during these times.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Thank you, James.
You're welcome.
And Florence, let's move on. I mean, I mentioned earlier that you were my first interview as a budding young reporter. So I guess in that time, how has your role shifted, and especially in the last year or so?
I think interestingly, it was also my first GM role, and I was probably in the job for like a month when we had this interview. So I think in a way that was almost a good point for me. I was not used to it. So, you know, it changed, and that was, I was not in a better place than if I had 10 years experience. But I took over in August 2019. So I was not even in a year in the job when COVID started. So I was trying to think about it, and I think the list of how it changed is so long that I cannot even cover all of it. I think we've all gone through, yes, I carry bags of dirty linen. I went and cleaned rooms. I was probably for 3 to 6 months during the various lockdown back to being a receptionist on top of everything else. So it has changed so much, and I think it continues. I think it's not completely behind us, unfortunately. So we still have to evolve and to adapt very, very quickly. I've seen as well that we probably all learn how to manage remotely from time to time, you know, not being on site. It's something, it was a big change at the beginning, and I'm working from home today because I actually find that sometimes it's probably more efficient. So yes, I think it's constantly changing, and I think it's very important, as James mentioned, to be, you know, thinking quickly and being agile, because you need to adapt to changes all the time.
And of those additional responsibilities that you have gained, I know you mentioned, for example, taking laundry home, or even I'm particularly interested with the remote work perspective. How long do you think this will be the case?
I think it will stay, to be honest. I think, again, it depends, but we all had probably role evolving and changing. And for me, I'm starting to help the owner with her second hotel in the Lake District. So I'm learning how to actually manage remotely. During the first lockdown, we had to. So I think also it's good for leaders to sometimes be able to take a step back. And when I'm at home, it allows me as well to, you know, think differently. So I would almost recommend for people to sometime take a bit of time out of the business, or even, you know, going and working in another place, because then you see things that you don't see in your home place, and then you come back and then you have more ideas, and you have almost fresh pair of eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good advice there. And I'd like to move on to bring Mike into the conversation here and ask, what has been your experience?
Yeah, thanks, Louise. And I think I echo really from James as well, is being compassionate and understanding and supportive in it, because the difficult situations have been so difficult. When you think you're confident in your own role managing the business before lockdown, and then during it, I open up to be vulnerable. I just don't know where to turn, how to answer these questions. Nobody really knew. And we needed to branch out and become more collaborative with other GMs, other professionals, and ask these same questions, because that comes together. James, rightly so, the same with our staff first. These difficult situations were coming. The chef couldn't get deliveries, reception were getting, I wouldn't say challenged questions about the policies, what was happening in the hotel, and giving the staff and allowing them the autonomy to make these decisions. And I would support them rather than having to call me if I'm not present and I'm not there, not able to do it, and support them with those answers. If they're wrong decisions, it's a decision that's been made. I have 2 children. If I tell them we might go to the shop and we might get some sweets and we might go there, what's happening? Nobody knows, and it causes animosity and ambiguity. If I say, no, we're not doing that, it's a decision that's made and we'll support it. And equally, yes, we're doing that. The customer's resolved, the staff are resolved, and that's really how I see it being. But I'm looking out the window here of the meeting room I'm in, and I was cutting the grass with some deck shoes on and a pair of shorts. We literally got down to our knuckles in having to support so many departments with the unfortunate redundancies that had to take place in our restructure reopening. And we just had the elevation of staff wanting to come back, which was lovely to find us in the industry again, and the customers coming back equally as positive. But it's grafting times and still is.
Mm. And may I ask to focus on your employees now? I mean, I'm assuming that we've all had to upskill in many ways, and we've all had to pitch in, so to speak. But what skills have your employees learned? And from your point of view, Mike, how are you encouraging their professional development?
Yeah, sure. That's really engaging, because here, being a country house hotel, we've now got 86 employees that are sort of contracted between part-time, full-time and 0 hour. And we've had a lot of staff that have pushed us we've got a core management team that we've held together, which has been the real core to help us grow through this. And staff have transferred across departments, so interdepartmental, sort of, we've got a therapist working a bit of waitressing. We've got some admin doing some housekeeping to sort of do a bit of both where they wanted to. So the career progression for them has been really, really encouraging, for them to see how they want to help themselves personally, and for me to be behind it to support them in allowing that to happen, but not then causing a problem throughout the department with a mismanagement of what they're learning and how the standards are. So they really have taken a lot of responsibility themselves, asked me questions. Can I do this, Mike? Is that okay? Can I do this? Yes, it is. And we just railroad them on the right guidelines, and we've allowed them to grow and run their positions as we've employed them for, as opposed to saying, this is how you're now going to do your job. Do it like this for me, please. Let them do it and come and tell me what's happening, but just realign them and guide them again. So we've done a lot of in-house training, a lot of support online if they've wanted it, from health and safety executives through to online training for allergens from front of house through lockdown. So they've gained recognition in what they could have done remotely, rather than perhaps going to face-to-face trainings, from wine sommelier training to food hygiene training. So we've done as much as we can when it's ready for those people and individuals to grow.
It does make me wonder whether we are going to see more cross-departmental training, apprenticeships, or just, having that door open to show this is where you can move to. I know I myself have worked in hotels, and I've worked in many different positions, but we've all had to, so to speak, muck in or upskill or learn a new skill when needed. But it is, I know times are still tough, but I do think the future is certainly a promising one, looking at that career development. So Thomas, I'd like to come to you next, please, and ask, what has been some of your key learnings?
Interestingly, I think it's mainly about people, and it was two different things: resilience and how well people can hold up in difficult situations, actually, and the ability to embrace change, counterbalanced with the fragility of our teams and the employment situation. So they kind of interlinked, and they kind of don't necessarily align, but they are there, and they're there together. So I think at the beginning of the pandemic, I think we saw, at least here for sure, great resilience, great kind of coming together of communities, both within the hotel, both outside the local community, a lot of support. And of course we gave support and we helped, but that was quite amazing to see, and something that maybe we hadn't seen to that level before. It was kind of forced. And we then saw how well we can adapt, how well when we are challenged, how well people, the industry can make changes, can do things differently, things that some of us might never have thought of doing in our careers, in our hotels, whether you're, looking at luxury service or not. We've done things differently. Some things will stay, won't they, after the pandemic? Some things, use of technology will definitely have increased, even for the more old school style kind of people who enjoy things, whereby actually there is an added level of service through that. So that was brilliant to see. And then a bit more, not I was worrying, but that gave us more thought, was the fragility of people who, after the length of time went on, and as we came out of the pandemic once, twice, 3 times, I think probably I did reopenings, approximately between fire breaks and lockdowns. And of course, yes, it does put a stress and a toll on people, on all of us actually, and not just on people. And it was important to realize that actually the levels of support we have to give needed to change and needed to be improved in general across, and some of the expectations of work/life have changed, and the expectations of work, some of the people who are maybe more old school in their thinking and have come through a hotel background, I mean, like myself, I'll be hands up here, we've all worked through, and a lot of us got to where we got to by lots of hard work, and people say that that's how we do it. And maybe now, I'm not saying we need to work a lot less, but the expectation levels and the way to get to where we have to get to is something and I think is a key learning for me from work.
Do you think that, I mean, we've just touched on things like employee well-being, and I've seen, for example, quite a few owners or general managers pop on LinkedIn that when it comes to things around mental health and allowing employees access, it could be once a month to a counsellor or a therapist or someone that they can talk to, especially when it comes to other things like balancing that work-life harmony. Is that going to become more amplified or maybe a permanent feature of?
Yeah, I think definitely, and that's probably across many industries, to be fair. The pandemic probably caused that, but definitely I think there's been much more awareness, and I think the world is moving that way. I think in general there's much more awareness of the need to take care of people's mental health, and that's how often it's not seen, and there is that sense of fragility running through things that maybe has always been covered over and the like. I think that applies not only to people, but then to the whole kind of sustainability as well, and sustainability of employment and the planet itself, actually.
And these key learnings that you've just highlighted, Thomas, how do you think this is going to inform future decisions moving forwards?
Well, what it definitely has done is it's allowed me to look at things slightly differently. You used to have quite a quick snap reaction. Maybe as a GM, you get used to making decisions quite quickly sometimes, and you need to make decisions. I think that's been brought up a couple of times already, actually, by both Mike and James, and that making decisions is better than not making one. And I think now my decision-making process maybe takes into consideration both the adaptability of people to change and the way we can actually maybe drive more change than we thought we could beforehand, whilst being maybe slightly more sensitive to the fragility of kind of work-life balance and just well-being in general, and hoping that everyone can live the best life they can when they're with us.
I've seen quite a few headlines of restaurants or hotels, for example, cutting back to maybe or cutting trade, for example, because not so much that they can't meet the demand because they don't have the staff there, but it's more of the well-being of their staff. They want to protect them from burning out.
Absolutely, and I would say that we have taken those steps where we've had to, which is, if you asked me that 2 years ago, I'd say I wouldn't have known what to answer, I suppose. I'll be honest with you. And now, we find it easier to make decisions on behalf of our staff maybe than we would have done before the pandemic, for sure. The ones that make sure that we are protecting the employee as well as the business. I think also to allow you to deliver the right product and the right service, because there is a balance as well. Is that by scaling one thing back, you're allowing us to do what we do well properly, as opposed to trying to do too much with the resource we have. Again, resource is finite, whether it's human or anything else with the supply chain, and balancing that has become, again, I think we are much more flexible with those decisions, for sure. I see that across the industry.
Yeah.
Thanks, Thomas. And Robert, you mentioned earlier that today marks an anniversary for your first time as a general manager. So since you've now moved on to the Institute of Hospitality, what qualities are you now applying to your new role?
As a general manager, I hope, came across as quite collaborative. I always looked at my team and my immediate reports on my HOD team as a focus group versus a set of managers. Each of them had their own different backgrounds, different religions, different race, etc. And then when you were looking at how you take your business through the year or take your business through a specific set of challenges, you've got a great sounding board. Now, when we came into the first lockdown, before business grants or furlough was announced, I was running a coastal hotel. And I sat down with my management team. We had guests voting with their feet. COVID was on the rise and everything was very uncertain. And we thrashed out in a day what we were going to do to take the business forward. And that included restricting operation in certain areas, looking at sanitisation. We were one of the first businesses out there to start looking at QR codes for menus. And it was a very, very good way of doing things. Now, coming to the Institute, I'm running a organisation that's been in existence for 83 years. And it's been in existence for 83 years because it's been adaptable and agile. And I bring that same collaborative nature there. So my team and I have a date every 3 months where we get round a table, and this is everyone employed by the Institute of Hospitality, and we look at where we're going to take the business going forward. So we've currently, as a team, written our plan for the next year, and that includes our budget, includes our output, areas for growth, and no person within the team can turn around and say they didn't have involvement in it. And I think that's very useful because everyone's empowered to actually speak their mind, to step up and to put their ideas forward. And no manager out there, I hope no manager out there, is the finished article. And certainly we don't have every answer. So by putting people in, being collaborative, we're going to come to a result that's far better than if we brought ourselves there on our own. And that leads into our output. So we're pushing a diversity strategy at the moment, which is quite successful. And that was a team effort. We have extended our collaboration to forums to help with things like the magazine, which Eloise is part of. We have a youth council. So we have entry-level talent telling us what we need to be doing to engage with entry-level talent. So that's a very long-winded answer, but my career as a GM has taught me that you have to be collaborative, you have to involve other people, because the minute you go it on your own, you will fail.
Whilst, before I ask you your next question, Robert, I will just flag that if any of the audience has any questions, please do submit these either in the chat or using the QA function, and I will get round to these at the end. So Robert, you've touched on ideas and you've touched on sparking creativity and collaboration, but how do you foster that right environment to generate ideas within your organisation?
I think you have to empower people. So if you hire someone, if I'm the CEO of a business and I hire a general manager, I'm hiring them to manage that business. I'm not micromanaging them. I'm not telling them what to do, overruling them. I'm giving them the opportunity to actually step up and do the job. On occasion, they're going to fall. And when they do, you pick them up, you find out what went wrong and you help them through it. And that applies to everyone in your business, irrespective of length of service, irrespective of role. You let them do their job. And if you've recruited well, and if you've built that collaborative environment, they're going to flourish. Conversely, if you go the other way, and I think if everyone looks at the people they've been managed by over their career, they'll see people that you've taken positive from, and then you'll see people that you've taken negative from. And that's useful too, because that teaches you ways of not managing a team. But allow your team to actually do the job that you've hired them for, and you won't really go wrong.
Thanks, Robert. So let's talk about leadership skills then. And I'd like to bring Florence back into the conversation here and ask, what leadership skills are you currently working on at the moment?
I think that's a difficult question. I think it's always, all of them. I think you need to always question yourself, are you doing the right thing? Are you doing it in the best possible way? And that's changing a lot. I think, in the past 18 months, the way people want to be managed probably quite different. I really hear Thomas and Robert in terms of, I don't think I make any decision on my own anymore. I think if someone is coming, I would probably ask them, what would you like to do? What do you think we should be doing? Because you're the one who will have to do it on a daily basis. So what do you think is the right approach, the right decision? I might see a different angle and challenge some aspect of it. But I don't think you need your team to be 200% on board with anything you're doing. So you need to ask them, what do they see that you don't see, how they can bring some, different angle to the question, and then you make a decision as a team. So I think it's about being, collaborative, participative, getting people engage on board with anything you do, because it's so complicated. Yes, we are all resilient, and I found that my team at some point was reaching their limit in terms of how many changes they can cope in such a short period of time. I felt I reached my limit in terms of resilience. You had a plan A and a plan B and a plan C, and all of them are actually going to the bin because there was a new announcement from the government and you have to do it all over again. And when it's like the third or the fourth time it's happening, it's like, I can't do it anymore. And that's when, having your team behind you is so important, because I was going to them and it's like, okay, guys, now I don't know anymore. What do we do? What do you think? So I think it's also being very honest with them, and it's okay to say that I don't know. Right now I have no idea. I'm completely lost. I need all of you to help me.
We were talking on the pre-call about what it means to be human, right? And how sometimes we do need to drop that barrier. And I made a joke that you don't really want to be seen as naked, but it is bringing it down to that level where you are approachable and you can reach out for help. And whilst I'm with you, Florence, we've had a couple questions come in about the kinds of qualities that you look for in team members, particularly when you are recruiting. What would you say is an important quality, Florence? And is there a priority, for example, with training and experience first, or is it attitude and work ethic? Combination of both?
I think it's absolutely attitude and work ethic. I think, especially we're small, independent, so we don't have the name, the brand that is attracting people. We don't have huge salaries. People are not coming to us for money, and that's probably a good thing. I do all the interviews myself at the moment, always my head of people and culture, because I don't have any HODs or anything to help me with that. So I honestly tell them what they will get, and it's a very caring environment. I think work-life balance has always been a priority for Serena, the owner, and that hasn't changed. So even before, we're already able to say, I'm actually working Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and I don't know a lot of GMs who have the luxury of being able to say that. And that's what I say to people is, we're going to look after you. So as soon as they're on board with the idea, that they are motivated and nice and polite, they can join the team. I really can't afford to be picky and saying, if you don't have 2 years of experience, or if you haven't used our software before, it's not going to work. That's just not. I don't think anybody can do that anymore, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. I'm a big believer that you learn on the job anyway. I know I've had some of my biggest learnings from making mistakes, and believe me, I've made quite a lot of them during my time in hospitality, but it's almost a rite of passage to kickstart your career. So let's move on to bring James back into the conversation here. And we are obviously at the moment talking about leadership skills and the general manager role. But James, in your own opinion, do general managers spend enough time on the guest-facing elements of the job, or does revenue management, operations, and all the rest get in the way?
It's a very good question. And I would believe 2 years ago, general managers potentially would spend a lot of time on revenue management. But the world has changed, and changed very fast. And I believe first and foremost, you have to spend time with your team and the customer, and then equally in tandem to really look at revenue, because the reality of life is, it's expensive now to come to hotels. Because let's be honest, we spend a lot of money increasing wages. We have to find talent. Equally, food, beverage is going up as well. But likewise, you have to spend time hand in hand with the operation. So in my opinion, nowadays, I think we have to be on the front line. And then when you talk to customers, talk to your team, then you can make the right revenue decisions as well. So, I'm always, aggressive in my approach and want to push revenue. It's number one. Revenue forgives all sins in our business. And, that's an old adage, but it's so true. But at the same time, it has to be enough revenue that you can deliver a proper service to our customers. And I think that's very important, because if you charge great rates and you don't deliver the service, the customer will never come back. So that's my opinion. I believe as a general manager, you have to do all three, but also nowadays you need to do it better, quicker, faster, because the guidelines have changed absolutely upside down. And if you're not, for example, looking at all three on a daily basis, I would say every 2 hours, then you're going to be left behind.
And on that note, what do you think the industry, and talking from a wider angle now, what could the industry be better at?
Well, we have to get a lot better, more conscious about being more sustainable, more conscious about, let's be honest, we have COP26 here in the United Kingdom right now. More conscious that, can we be more efficient around how we heat our hotels, how we, consume energy, for want of a word. More conscious around how you can work with your local communities, local schools, attract talent. Not expecting that people just, I come from a big brand, but people just don't walk in the door. You have to go out there and put your arms around your local schools, local colleges, get involved in community activities. Customers are making decisions around how sustainable you are. I had a guest who emailed me personally. He says, show me how you do your recycling and before I make my booking decision. And I just thought that was phenomenal. And I had to absolutely show it all the way through. So again, I believe we have to get a lot better within those areas, in which again, it comes on to sustainability, but local community, be involved. And I honestly believe once you're involved, the community will take care of your customers and your team members, because you'll attract from both areas.
I've mentioned it before in conversations that I think the last year or so, hotels have, from what I understand, almost done a full cycle. Is it that they're establishing themselves once again at the heart of that community? I mean, I'm too young to understand what hotels were like back in the day, but I'm of the understanding that they were very much the place to be seen. You would socialize, you'd go hang out. I do wonder if, as a result, that hotels now have a.
And it absolutely will revert. I always believe we need to create what you want to do, be robust, create a dynamic future. So people will say, let's go to the local hotel to have a drink, have a cocktail, have a great meal. Let's, when the family come to visit, let's go to call up the hotelier, let's see if we get a great room. So again, if you do that with your community, you can really win very well.
Thanks, James. And we have to touch on technology in this conversation. I mean, we've all had to add it in some way to our personal and professional lives. And so, Mike, how has technology changed your role, and how do you see that process continuing?
It's changed it immensely, if I'm honest. And whether it's keys to key cards, or a booking diary in the desk with GDPR, now to online booking, and to Facebook on your phone as an employee, or Facebook on your reception desk computer, that in a previous employment was circulated a pink memo from the director or the owner of this hotel to say if anybody's caught utilising social media or Facebook, will be disciplinary actions. And now we're employing people in our businesses to optimise these solutions, channels, messages, group chats, to deliver business back into the hotel. And you're purchasing iPhones and iPads for administrative staff to manage this for us. And it's going, okay, well that's what has to happen. So we're an industry, it doesn't open and close. It's so the cogs just keep turning all the time. And the expectation for guests' solutions or answers or quotations or an answer for a room is almost sort of, if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, it's on a train and they're in Europe somewhere, or 4 in the afternoon and the administrative team have sort of gone for the day, left early. Who's answering it? Why have I not had an answer? Because they might have emailed Thomas or a bit further away, or James up in London. They're going to our competitors looking for something to book. And if you're not ready to do that, you miss an opportunity. So you have to balance, again, the welfare of the staff that have these content and ability to have this on their personal devices or a linked account or shared emails, to they're at home, they're off work, they're finished. But as a team, we're still open, we're still trading. That has to be answered. So technology, it's profiled everything, but hospitality is just there to look at. And you submit your rates, you submit all these things online to be found, to compete. And it makes you diverse and agile to think, is this the right way to go? Or should we just be a bit more, no, we'll deal with it when we're ready? But you can't. So technology has enhanced it immensely, hugely.
Which ties into my next question, and whether you want to call, for example, implementing technology a risk-taking decision. But hotels have been somewhat, but I wouldn't say behind the curve, but somewhat slow in implementing and deploying technology. So Mike, staying with you for this question, how has the past 20 months changed attitudes towards risk-taking?
Yeah, a lot, again, because we look at the prices we were charging for what we are in our demographic, where we are and what's our audience, what are we trying to attract? Are we going to become a KPI now and attract wedding venue? Are we going to become a spa break, a group of ladies to come out, husband and wives? We now, since the lockdown, opportunities to be more of a family hotel for children to come and stay with us and allow swimming hours or don't allow swimming hours, because Eloise, you might want to come with your partner and you don't want young Tommy jumping in the swimming pool, splashing. So we have to choose, do we do it all day or do we choose it to be hours and not offset and discriminate against somebody else and some other opportunity? So that what you're showcasing and what we're advertising is huge to show that. So the risk-taking implementation is a big decision to make on what to do, because people want to see value for money and they're happy to sometimes spend a lot more money if it's a birthday, an anniversary or celebration. So I don't want to go with Groupon or other opportunities online to devalue as such our product, but to keep it as a high entity business to come and spend your valued money at, but deliver the quality and be confident to deliver that. It brings us back on the front line as a pressure as a GM to think, is it happening? Is the restaurant set? Is the housekeeping ready? Have we had a debrief about the operations at reception? Do we know any VIPs? Do we know anybody coming in today? You know, you have to just keep on the pulse of it to make sure you deliver it, because technology has put us in front of everybody on such a global platform of a boutique hotel in Kent in the countryside that you wouldn't really have the profile for without it. So we have to embrace it, have to utilize it, but you need to know how to utilize it and how to use it. And it goes back to other conversations we've had, bringing people in that know how to do that, because I don't. I generally manage the situations of what has to be decided to do, not the kamikaze, I can do this, I'm in this position because I know it all. No, by far. So it's changed it a lot, and it does being the risk diverse, but you've got to be secure in being confident to deliver that. If you're going to charge a bit more for an afternoon tea, charge a bit more for this, charge a bit more for that, just to balance both, really. So it's a big change,
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Mike. And if there's obviously any hoteliers or general managers in the audience, I'd be very interested to hear all your thoughts and opinions and experiences on everything that we have been touching on today. To move on to loop Thomas in, what has been some of your recent successes? I mean, what are you proud of? And more importantly, how did you accomplish this?
I think the best thing is that we're sitting here today, that we've kind of come through what's been crazy difficult time with other successes around it, and actually, you know, coming into November feeling like we've got through summer without, you know, any major disturbances, was a proud moment for the team and I, actually. And we sat around and spoke about this recently. We went out together to say that we'd managed, you know, without having to close the hotel since May, all the way through, and offering, you know, a level of service we're proud of. And that was done really because we learned from the first lockdown and the second lockdown. When we came to the third big one, we took a bit of a risk last January where we started recruiting quite early, knowing that we wouldn't be open probably in March. We started recruiting and allowed us to open full pelt in May. It was still challenging. It was still the busiest we've ever been. But we ran for a long time with very few restrictions, only kind of COVID ones as opposed to staffing ones. That has changed since. I mean, we have had, it's harder to backfill and you know, everyone's caught up to the same place. But that was an amazing thing to do. at the same time, in that May, we had a few inspections. We were lucky enough to be inspected by the AA early on, did quite well in that. And so it was nice to be able to do these things in a difficult time. And you kind of almost take pride in the team for achieving those things. And you saw a lot of it actually recently as the award season comes around, and you see all the people receiving awards for different things. I do think they mean a little bit more for everybody, the small ones, the big ones, and just getting through as an industry. I think it's an amazing feeling, and everyone who has and everyone who's tried deserves to feel proud of it, because it's not been easy for anybody. And seeing teams come together and the industry come together, I think that should make us all proud.
And can I stay with you a moment, Thomas, to ask a question from the audience about what's one thing that you were doing as a general manager before COVID that you would do differently today?
I think before COVID, I was, I'd say quite old school in my thinking. I grew up in hotels where things were that way, and there's nothing wrong with it. They were brilliant places to work and to learn. And definitely now I was quite rigid in a luxury mindset of this is the way things are done. And now I'm open to all sorts of different ideas that I would never have really wanted to consider before. I have to caveat that by saying this is also my first GM role, 3 years into it almost. But so I haven't got years and years of experience of being a GM, other roles where you have multiple responsibilities. So through there, I would say, I said when I first started my GM role, it was before COVID, and a year in, COVID happened. So I would say I was a lot less open to change in what I thought was the right thing to do before COVID happened. And COVID allowed me to really open up how I think and what's acceptable, actually.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Thomas. And almost leading on from that around empowerment, and I guess what we can learn from others, I'd like to ask Robert, how can leaders empower other leaders?
I think looking at the lens of COVID, when we came out of the first lockdown, went straight into the second, we had the tier system, so everything was uncertain. Leaders in businesses, certainly in the boutique and the independent sector, who weren't part of chains, didn't necessarily have the support structure. So I reached out to local GMs in my area, and we essentially started collaborating and talking and empowering each other to make decisions to lead our businesses through. And it was good to have that sounding board. Looking at my team now, how you empower other leaders is by letting them do the job that you brought them in to do. You develop them, you put them in a culture that you can watch them flourish. If they need something, you're there to do it for them. And essentially, it's almost like an inverse pyramid. So you're at the bottom, empowering the people above you to do the best that they can rather. And in the event that they fall, which will happen, you take them away, you talk them through, you look at what you could do differently, and you use it as a learning exercise.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Robert. I'd like to bring in a question from the audience here, and I think I'd like to ask it to James, as we were touching on such things as revenue and having to be on the ball with that department, amongst other things too. But James, do you expect to be able to pass on to your customers the higher wages and other prices that you are now faced with? And will room rates stay high in 2022?
Very good question, and thank you, Peter Hancock, for that question. Let's be honest, we're in the business to make money, so absolutely, if I have the opportunity, I'll do it. But at the same time, it's going to be difficult to maintain the margins of what ownership are going to be looking for, because again, the reality of higher wages, higher cost to do business. But again, it's like revenue. We come to January, you get a great deal when you come to my hotel here in London. But at the same time, if you're in November, it's a whole different ballgame. So revenue changes depending on the climate and the market at the same time. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. And I'd like to, before we close off, I would like to ask each of you the exact same question, and I'll move from left to right on my screen and ask you, what do you think will be a defining characteristic of the new age general manager? And I'm going to begin with Thomas, if I can, please.
Actually, I say something maybe a bit controversial. I think we generally we're a little bit operationally led as GMs. At least I feel that way, and often we get quite easily sucked into operation to plug holes, to firefight, and the like. And I think we're going to get much more success from leading from the extent and guiding the reins a bit more, and allowing people to flourish more than doing that, whilst keeping, as I think James mentioned a couple of times, I'm like, the importance of being on the floor and listening and knowing, having the knowledge and what people are thinking, but actually spending less time at the front, actually guiding people and being that mentor and being the person who helps people realize their full potential, as opposed to just getting it done.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Thomas. And same question to Mike, please. A defining characteristic of up-and-coming general managers.
Yeah, definitely open-minded and just accepting advice and accepting guidance from people that know the industry, what they can see it and feel it more in their department. So the restaurant manager comes to you with an idea, the head housekeeper, the spa manager, anything, the admin office in their teams. Not just be no, it's my way, I'm the general manager, I'm going to do it, I've got the experience, I've done it. Just really be open-minded to listen to those, conversely, swerved ideas that might not be what we've normally done, because normally isn't anything that can be accepted to run by anymore. You just have to say yes to some things you normally say yes to. And just be open-minded and supportive and collaborative. We've all used those words, and it's really nice to hear that in a spectrum of GMs here, that a lot of that has all come through naturally from our own notes or our own thoughts of what's been said, is to really be like that. And not, we wear that title, but it's there to just make decisions, to give everybody else alongside us, not beneath us, alongside us and around us, that we can make the final decision on it. But actually, so they've got a lot of confidence in something that's happening. So just to be open-minded and collaborative and supportive to everybody in our team.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Mike. And your take on the same question, Florence?
I think it's probably more what I hope to see, and I would say it's a more diverse generation of GMs. I was really pleased because I went to the interview for the St. Julian Scholar a few weeks ago, and I met one person who is currently HR, and he's like, but I still want to be a GM one day. And I know it's very uncommon, but I want to show that, someone from HR can be a GM. And I was like, that's brilliant. It's great to hear. And I think I would bet that, most of the GM at the moment have all gone through operation, either, F&B or front office. But I think we need more diversity, because it will also help the industry to evolve and to change. I think we touch on technology, and we've been quite terrible as an industry in terms of, improving the way we do things, being more strong with technology efficiency. And I think if we have a more diverse generation, then the industry will be a lot better.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Florence. And James, what's your thoughts on this question?
It's a very good question. First of all, I'd like to thank my fellow panelists, because we had some great thoughts here today. And I'm going to do a plug here, Eloise. Obviously, I'm the chairperson for the Master Inholders Conference in January, which is on the 17th and 18th of January in Riverbank Park Plaza. And it's the leadership conference for 2022, where all the general managers are going to get in the room. And really, for me, it's just the advice: be bolder, be braver, be better. And that's what we were all talking about here today. And it's about being optimistic about our future and working with great people, developing them, and more importantly, talking to our customers, listening to them, delivering what service they wish, and be agile, make decisions. So please, if you wish to come to the conference, you will find a lot more about those topics in depth in that time in January of 22. So thank you.
You're welcome. I'll certainly be attending that conference, and it'll be great to actually remove the virtual screen and talk about this in person.
Correct, as hoteliers should do.
Yeah.
And Robert, what do you think is going to be a defining characteristic of the new age general manager?
Well, I think I'm really pleased to go last in this this lineup because everyone's had some great answers so far. But I think we all agree that collaboration is needed, but it's to be proactive with it. So go to your team, go to your customers, go to your community, and actually ask them, what do you need from me? What development do you need? How can we get there? Bring your problems to your team. We have a footfall drop-off because of COVID. What do we do about it? And the team will respect you because you've given them the opportunity to actually drive the business. You're not paying lip service to it, you're actually actively going to them. And that builds a much better environment to work in.
Thank you. And thank you all for your insights and thoughts and opinions today. We are coming up to 3 o'clock UK time. So we are going to temporarily pause the conversation. I do encourage you to connect with our Trailblazers over LinkedIn to carry it on. But I must mention that I am going to be back for the Trailblazer webinar, Digitally Innovating the Guest Experience, on Monday, the 29th of November. So the link to register has been popped into the chat, and it would be great to see you all there. And if you would like to hear further information about any of the webinars at Boutique Hotel News and the wider publications within international hospitality media, please do get in touch with my colleague Katie. Her contact details are up on your screen now. So thank you so much to our Trailblazers once again for your input and contributions today. Thank you for those tuning in live, and thank you to our sponsors. We will leave the webinar open for an additional 2 minutes for you to follow up with any of the links or any of the questions that have been popped into the chat today. But otherwise, feel free to stay on. If you need to jump off, feel free to do so. But otherwise, I'll be seeing you in a few weeks' time on Monday, the 29th of November. So do take care, enjoy your day, and I'll see you all very soon.